It certainly is an unprecedented time at the moment in the economy for Australia and the world, to be honest. It's not just insulated to Australia. We have seen things that have a correlation to this. So in my career back when I was a valuer, during the GFC, I worked with a lot of mortgagee assets and distressed assets. So I looked after quite a few of those when the bank was going through that repossession process and other different financiers. So it's not that we haven't seen this before. It's certainly not too dissimilar to the GFC times. And obviously what happened in America was on a far bigger scale than what happened in Australia. So it's not unprecedented, but I think we are going to see this at the next level. You know, having the banks put payments on hold on a national level is quite unprecedented. It's something we haven't seen before. And now coming out the back of that, it's going to be very interesting how the banks handle this. There is a lot of legislation and regulation around what they have to do when an asset is in arrears and in financial distress. So they can't just sell it to their mate like people used to believe bank managers did, whether it happened or not. I'm not going to be the judgment of that. But there were some practices that weren't best practice and weren't desirable practices many years ago, and that's been stamped out with a whole lot of regulation and legislation. So the lenders do have a duty of care to their clients, and they do have a process they have to follow that makes sure that they achieve the highest value they possibly can for the asset, because at the end of the day, the person that's in financial distress, you know, once they go into arrears and then interest charges are added to that, legal costs and all the other array of charges, the amount owed is quite significant. And if the property is worth more than that and they can sell it for more than that and they do that properly, they should absolutely be able to get as much money back as possible, not only to cover the outstanding debt, but also anything back that's surplus to that actually should go back to that person, because that might help them out of that financial hardship and help set them up for the next stage of their life. You know, we see distressed asset situations coming out of all different scenarios. Sometimes it's that the person has fallen into arrears because they've had an illness in the family. We see it through mental health quite often. They've lost their job, redundancies, all sorts of situations that are often out of their control. So it's usually quite an upsetting set of circumstances that's led to that. And, you know, the bank always want to try and do the best they can, or the financier want to do the best they can to help that person get into a better position. Unfortunately, sometimes on the way through, though, the property assets do have to be sold. So they certainly want to try and do the best job they can to get the best price. You know, back in the day, I know there's stories float around, and I have seen a bit of it myself throughout my time, where, you know, someone at the bank would just sell it to a friend, or the agent would sell it to a friend and say, look, you've just got to cover the debt that's outstanding. The property might be worth, say, $500,000, the debt's only $350,000. If we get that back, we're happy. That stuff just doesn't or shouldn't happen anymore. It's against the law, and it's not allowed. And banks are pretty good at making sure they do the right thing when it comes to this area, because they do want to make sure that they're looking after their clients as best they can, and they understand circumstances can be out of people's control. I know there are circumstances where people just don't want to pay because they've got themselves in over their heads by making very bad decisions, by sometimes taking risks they shouldn't have. So it's not always things like that, but more often than not it is.